Hey, you guys, it is Lisa Alexander, founder of Stand Up Survivor, and I am here with Qiana Howell, and she is the CEO and founder of Empowered to Heal. Hey, Qiana, how are you?
Hi, how are you guys? Happy good evening to everybody.
I'm so glad that you decided to join me. You guys, she's an author, she's a therapist, she's a coach, and I'm just so thankful she said yes. So we met like on Instagram, right, guys? And so I am always connecting with people who are amazing, and she was, and I just knew that I needed to bring her to you guys. So Qiana, we're talking about, hey, you guys, I see y'all coming in. We are talking about emotional healing. So before we dive in, Qiana, let's talk about you for a second. I know that you shared that you were a therapist as well as you were a survivor. So let's talk about that real quick.
Okay. Which part?
Hey, you guys, it's Lisa Alex,
okay.
Right, guys. So, it's okay. It's okay, turn it down.
I'm sorry. I was trying to get my daughter to share it on Facebook. Okay, so hi guys. I'm Qiana.
Actually, turn the volume down real quick.
Go in the other room and turn the volume down, please.
It's okay. Hey, okay. Tiffany. Hey, Jordan. Hi, Lori. Thank you. I love you too. I appreciate it. So yes, Qiana, tell us.
Okay, so I am Qiana Howell. I am a mom of two beautiful daughters. I am from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised, and I am currently in Georgia. I moved here from Maryland a few years ago. I am a therapist. I was completing my master's program and started in the field of mental health in Maryland in about 2012. My first real job, though, honestly, was with the domestic violence population. I initially started with a nonprofit to help support and advocate for the victims. And then I end up being promoted to manage an abuser intervention program.
So you've seen both sides of this.
I have. Okay. So it was a great opportunity because I was not long from, leaving my relationship. And so it actually ended up kind of being healing and therapeutic for me because like you said, I was able to see both sides from both the victim perspective, but also the abuser perspective. So it did broaden my scope to be able to really get a better understanding of the domestic violence in its wholeness. I got to learn things. I got to learn about the different forms of abuse that a lot of us even minimize or overlook or think that it's not abusive behaviors, but they are.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there real quick. I'm gonna stop you right there. So let's talk about that real quick for those that are popping in. They're saying, okay, so let's talk about those different forms of abuse. I know everybody, we feel like we know, but let's touch on what some of those are real quick.
So of course we know physical, mental, emotional are most commonly talked about. Some of the things that I learned that we had to teach the offender side. We had to help them be accountable for even sexual abuse, financial abuse. I even learned legal abuse because unfortunately at that time, while I was being an educator and, helping empowering other people in their journeys, I was still going through legal abuse with my ex because, just a lot of things that was happening that I didn't even realize that was considered a form of abuse. Okay. And so just to understand, but once I gained the understanding, that also helped me figure out how to take better control of the situation.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And not let it rise above me. That's when I really had to learn that I had to learn how to take my power back, get my voice back, and not keep being victim or victimized by my abuser, because even when you leave the relationship, you can still be victimized by your abuser until you really learn how to assert yourself and figure out how to protect yourself from continued abusive behaviors.
Well, I'm gonna interrupt right there, just so you know. I'm gonna pop in and out because I think what you said was really powerful, and I think that's what I love so much about what I get to do, because it's about finding your voice and using it. It's about taking your power back from the abuser, because for so long they've had that power, where you go, how you dress, what you do. And it's literally like you're actually taking your power back. And I think sometimes some survivors, and we're all in different stages, but we have to know that we can do that. It's ours to take.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Go.
I think along the way, you do feel powerless. You do feel like you've lost total control of your life. the decisions you make, the people you get to be around. So everything changes for you when you're in the abusive relationship. And so even when you leave, you kind of feel like a lost puppy. Like, what do I do now? And I think that's part of the problem that people don't understand. People are so quick to judge victims about why they don't leave quick enough, but they don't understand like the mental stronghold on that has been placed on you, so that even when you try to step out, it's almost like, what do I do now? You know, I was blessed to where I've always worked. I've never, you know, stopped working, being in my relationship. But there's a lot of women who they don't work when they're with their abuser, so they're like, I have to start over. I have no job. I have no money. You know, I don't have a place to go. So what do I do at that point? And so for some of them, that's why they do stay. It's not because they want to be abused. Right. It's not because they, you know, really are just weak-minded, but for them, they feel like I don't have access to the resources I need to survive.
Yeah, and you make a lot of good points there, especially with the whole not having enough. And I think that what I like about this conversation is that we understand if you are currently in a domestic violence situation and you're not working and you don't have money and you're thinking, oh my goodness, what can I do? But it has to be something. It's kind of like lighting a fire inside yourself and say, even if you have to crawl on your hands and your knees, you have to know and understand that you can get to the other side. You know, it's like, don't give up on you just because you feel really down and low. You know, I can do
that. And I think all of us have to reach a breaking point where we're like, enough is enough. You know, for me, honestly, having my oldest daughter, it just triggered something inside of me that says, I don't have to take this anymore. And this is not the life I want for her. And so I remember telling, you know, her dad, like, if this happens again, I'm out. And I remember he mocked me. It was like, oh, you just had a baby. You're not going anywhere. And I was like, oh, okay. And literally, it was just one more time. And I was like, I'm done. I left everything. I didn't even care about stuff. I didn't care. I just left. I moved, you know, out the state and everything because I was like, this is not what I want to do with my life. This is not what I want for my daughter. You know, by then I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I was like, I don't want my children to live like this. I didn't live like that. You know, I'm blessed to have parents who are still married, you know. So for them, it'll be 44 years this month. And so it's just, I never got to experience anything but a healthy marriage and seeing love and experiencing love. I wasn't in an abusive home. That's not even how they raised me. So it's like, I'm like, how did I end up in this situation? But I knew that they were my motivating factors to say, no, that's it. I'm done.
You know, I come from a family. Both my parents have been married for, I think it's like 53 years this year. And so I feel the same way you do. Like, I grew up seeing this. How did this happen? But regardless, it happened. And so now what am I going to do? What am I going to do about it? You know, Lori said, thank you for mentioning legal abuse. More light needs to be shed on this subject.
Yes. So I'll just share my personal experience that helped me discover. So what we were going through our divorce process, and when the judge approved the divorce, he then began to play games and would not sign the papers. And the time that they set for the papers to be signed lapsed. So we had to go back to court. And the judge was so upset because they're like, no, I granted this divorce. So she was like, he cannot leave this room without signing the papers. But unfortunately, it continued because we had children. He would file different motions, and he would file them. And because I was fearful of losing my children, I would go to every court date. And a lot of times he wouldn't show up, or he would get there and say, oh, I changed my mind. Wow. So like, he was putting me at risk of losing jobs. And thankfully, I am so grateful that I had employers that understood the situation I was dealing with, because I literally could have lost my job because I missed so much work having to go back and forth to court. All for him to always do the, oops, never mind, or didn't show up. And I'm like, you the one filed the motion and you didn't even show up. So once I started working at YWCA and I was reading, just the material that we were supposed to be teaching people, I was like, I went through that, and I was like, wow, I did not know there was a such thing as legal abuse, and that was still part of domestic violence. And so it was just interesting for me to know that. I was like, people really don't know the ins and outs of domestic violence. I was like, because part of the reason why I stayed in a relationship as long as I did was because I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Because again, I never knew before. And he didn't start off with the physical. Right. It was almost a couple years before the physical even happened. But I still knew something is happening in this relationship, but I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to get help because I don't know what it is. And so I was literally being mentally, emotionally abused to the build up to escalate to the physical.
And it's so funny. I agree with you completely. Like, I felt the same way. Like, I didn't know. I know something was wrong. Like, something hurt. This didn't seem right, but I didn't know what it was. And I think that's one of the reasons I started Stand Up Survivor, because I'm like, wait a minute. Who's talking about this? Why are people not talking about this? Because if I'm educated, if I know what it is, then maybe I can do something about it. Now, if you're educated and you still choose, that's fine. But if you don't know, you just don't know. Right. And I'm glad that you talked about the legal abuse. And I think we should talk about that later and maybe come back with a little bit more for the people, because a lot of people are experiencing this. They take them back to court, even with the narcissistic abuse with the children, just wanting to see you. So they petition after petition with the children, or just trying to control the relationship through the children, taking them back in court, not wanting to give it. It can become very, very crazy. And this is something that they use. So we'll definitely need to come back with you guys with some more legal abuse. Yes. We'll break that down a little bit more. So let's jump into something that I wanted to share with everybody. And that's the healing process. We all know, like we even talked about before we hit live, it can get ugly. There's nothing pretty about the healing process. And, they've heard me talk about, if you break your arm, like you have to protect it for a little while so that it can heal and go back to normal. If you get a cut or a scab or a scar, you don't leave it open. You have to cover it, protect it, and I think the same thing has to happen with our own minds and our own hearts. So let's talk about this, because a lot of people want to date again. They think about getting married, but they feel so broken. So go ahead. Qiana, talk to the people.
So, I think anytime you get out of a relationship, there's some hurt. Because you're disappointed that this person that you thought you were really maybe even in love with, it didn't work out. But I always tell people, you always got to go through some healing journey anytime you exit out of a relationship before you jump right into another one. But of course, when you are out of an abusive relationship, there's a certain level of healing that really has to take place, because the reality is, you're now broken in so many more areas. It's not just a broken heart. You have a broken spirit. Things, your mind is all over the place. You can't even recognize goodness when it crosses your path, because now you're defensive, you're guarded, you're fearful, you're scared. Like, is someone going to hurt me? People don't realize you're traumatized. Abuse is traumatizing. Some people actually end up with PTSD. I think everybody has some form of PTSD from after being in an abusive relationship. Absolutely. But some are more severe than others, because for some people they've been brutally abused. For them, the trauma from that. So you have to be able to go through a journey of healing. I don't encourage doing it alone. It's not something that you can really do alone, because you have to be able to have somebody that's kind of not just supportive, but accountable in your process, and helping you understand, okay, you may have got past this one issue, but now here's another issue that you have to deal with and address. And so I was blessed to have people around me that helped me through that journey. Because if you don't, all you're going to do is take those open wounds and then bleed on other people. I know you guys have seen on social media, if you don't heal, you're going to bleed on others. And it's so true. And it's not that you're doing it on purpose or that you want to be hurtful to other people, but unfortunately, I mean, you just have that experience because it's still there. It's still a residue. It still sits on you.
Yeah.
And then it depends on the situation. For some people, you still have to be in contact because of if you have children with this person, you have to still be in contact with them. You still have to figure out, how do I balance, working this out? Because unfortunately, even when the courts know that this was an abusive situation, they still require you to co-parent.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's another topic for another day. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
But yeah, it's important to just let your heart heal. Give yourself some time. Don't just think because you're not entering another relationship right away that, oh, okay, I'm good. I haven't dated in a couple of years, so now I'm good enough to date again, but you didn't work on yourself. It's important to face what really happened in this relationship. You have to pick apart what happened when it started. What were the early signs that I ignored?
Yeah.
Because it's important to be able to recognize it when you move on to the next. Because I'm gonna tell you, I encountered, a couple of people after that, and I started realizing, oh no, I know what that is. I'm not doing that.
And if you're able to recognize these things, you're able to say, oh, no, you recognize the flags. And so you're not even going to allow yourself. You're not going to, we're not giving chance after chance. We've seen what this looks like before, and we're not going to tolerate it. From the way you talk to me, the way you look at me, the way you talk to others. All of these things are things that are recognizable. And so if you've seen the red flags, you're like, no, that's okay. So I put down in the chat box, you made a good point. Healing happens in community with people to support you, to lift you up. So whether it's like a group, a domestic violence group, or you just have a best friend, or church, or wherever you find your community, it's a sister, a mother. It's important to have somebody to kind of hold your shoulders up, because there's going to be days. Let me just tell you. And it really doesn't matter what the type of trauma that you have. Trauma is trauma is trauma is trauma. You need someone to help you heal and go through it. I remember I was going through such a difficult time one time, and literally God just had like this one person, and because that person was there, I was able to journey through it. So it's to try to do it by yourself. It's possible. Anything is possible. I would say that it's possible, but I think it's not going to be as successful or as long-term as you would like it to be, because you can't do it by yourself. You can't do it by yourself.
I agree. I mean, I grew up, I think especially in the African American community, we have such a stigma about mental health. And so honestly, in the beginning, that wasn't my go-to. It wasn't to go get a therapist. For me, it was, the support of, spiritual sisters at the church that I was going to at the time. And it was such a blessing. It was so needed. But they were actually able to challenge me and push me to understand the importance of even forgiveness. Forgiveness is part of the healing process. How do you forgive someone that has pained you so? And that, honestly, that was the hardest thing for me, because I remember going through the forgiveness process with this person, and it was like no sooner than I'm thinking I'm making progress, something would be done that was like, I can't do this. I can't forgive this person. I have to maintain this hatred for them because they won't leave me alone. They won't let me be at peace. And so I had to, again, take my power back and be able to assert myself and really understand that the power of forgiveness it was for me. It was not about them. It was not about saying that what they did was right, or even what they were continuing to do was right. It was just saying, Qiana, you need to free yourself internally so that you can let go and let God. And guess what? Honestly, God avenged me in so many ways in that situation because I did that. So it was freeing for me. And I always tell people, so when
he does that so well. Laura said, she said, forgiving someone who has never or will never apologize is hard, but it's so worth it for your own peace. And I absolutely 110%. And I think another part of the forgiveness is like, you can't wait on forgiving yourself. How about we go there? Forgiving yourself, because I'm like, well, how did I get here? Or why did I allow this? Or just forgive yourself. You're human. You did the best you could with the information and knowledge that you had.
And being patient in the process, because you're right. The forgiveness is multifaceted. You got to
It
forgive
is.
them and you got to forgive yourself. And so for me, I had to work on forgiving them. And then I realized I still didn't forgive myself. And so then that was another
That's
part
it.
or experience of the process that I had to go through. And honestly, some of those things were revealed in my efforts to date again. You know, I was having certain experiences and I was realizing I was recreating flashbacks and experiences that weren't even really there because I was still dealing with the trauma of the situation. So some of the dating experiences did help me empower me to be able to grow and help me realize these are areas I still need to work on. These are unhealed spaces I still need to heal
Yeah.
from in order to really blossom and be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I talk about, because we're writing a book called Love After Abuse. It's coming out at the end of the month. But in the beginning of my chapter, I talk about how I dated, right? Like shortly after I got divorced, I started dating this guy, and we dated for like almost a year. And okay, obviously I'm not married to the guy, but the point is, it was still a journey for me. I learned a lot. I learned what a healthy relationship looks
Yeah.
like. I learned what healthy, a disagreement looked like. I learned the healthy things about a relationship,
Right.
So while that wasn't the person that was for me forever, it was still a learning process for me. So we don't just put yourself kind of in a corner or in a box and really think that, well, this is it. No one's ever going to love me. This is not for me. And trust me, when I tell you, I
Right.
talk to women, like I say this all the time, put all bet on yourself. Bet on yourself that you
Yeah.
can do everything and be everything that they said you could never
Right.
do. You know,
Right.
I want to
Right.
touch on something real quick. I know that you just talked about acknowledging the abuse that occurred, and I know for me, I was big on journaling, right? And so
Yeah.
in my marriage, I would journal, but then he would say sorry, and so I would rip out those pages because he said sorry, and I'm assuming they're not going to happen again, right? But of course they did. So I
Okay.
journal upon journal of all this type of abuse. So I think that one of the biggest things is acknowledging what occurred in the relationship. And whether that means
Yeah.
you write it down, you journal it, whatever it is, you take a moment to acknowledge the truth of what occurred because you can't heal what
Right.
you don't acknowledge.
Exactly.
And I think,
Exactly. That's why. Yeah, I agree. And honestly, that's my therapeutic approach, getting to the root.
that's it.
Actually, let's talk about what it is that traumatized you, what it is that changed your entire life and your worldview. We gotta revisit that experience in order to really decide how did it really change you, and what are your new perspectives or feelings about people and situations,
Yeah.
and how do we then at that point then we can work on moving past it. Then we can decide,
Right.
okay, we gotta forgive, we gotta work on self-esteem building. Like I have a whole little journey because I was able to mentally document my experiences and now transfer it into what I use for my therapeutic approaches. And I do think it's important to, again, make sure the person always know I'm walking with you. This is a no judgment zone. This is a safe space that you can be vulnerable. You can be, broken. You can be, whatever you need to be in the moment in
Yeah.
order for you to get to that healing and whole space.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, they have to understand that the road to healing just doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like this. It
Right.
is bumpy, it's ugly. You did. It can be really ugly. It can literally be gut wrenching and traumatizing.
Yeah.
You have to understand that there's another side to that healing journey. So another thing about
Yeah.
revealing what you've experienced, whether it's through, and this takes time, don't get me wrong, don't jump into this right away.
Yeah.
Okay. But you'll also, as you kind of jot down, well, this happened and this happened, you realize a lot of other things happen that you may have overlooked. And you may have been in an abusive relationship longer than you thought.
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
mentioned your relationship, it wasn't physical at first. It eventually got physical.
Yeah, and that's sometimes that's what I get frustrated about when I watch things in the media or listen to people talk about abuse, and they're so quick to judge and criticize the victim. Why she just didn't leave, or why he didn't leave after the first hit. And I'm like, the first hit didn't happen on the first date. Like, it doesn't happen like that. Even if you read the cycle of abuse and about the honeymoon period and the romanticizing and all of that and everything, how it's a cycle. And so we have to remember that this was someone that you entrusted yourself with, you entrusted your heart with, and you thought, okay, we're having a good time. We seem like we click. It's all good. And so it's different things that they start to do to plant the seeds. And unfortunately, a lot of times, some abusers, I'm not going to say all, but some abusers don't even realize what they're doing, because for them, it has become such an ingrained behavior that they picked up from their childhood. And so a lot of times we don't realize when we're dealing with abusers, they have a history. They have a history of being abused or witnessing abuse, and they don't recognize it. And so they start to exude and reside in certain behavior patterns that they think is normal, but it's not. And so for them, they're thinking, this is a way I show love, but it's an unhealthy way. And so it's important that we understand. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that too, because I'm going to back up for anybody who wasn't in when she first came in. Qiana has worked with offenders as well, domestic violence abusers, and so she's able to bring it in two different perspectives of the domestic violence journey. I know for myself, my ex-husband, he saw this growing up. So for him, the journey was, well, I saw it. This is what I learned, so this is what I do. And I give him zero passes. He gets zero ability to make any excuses for his behavior. But at the same time, I understand and know that it is a learned behavior. He gets no passes, but I understand that it's a learned behavior. I just want to say that real quick, because that's important. We're not giving them any excuses for their behavior. They also need to get help. And that's another topic for another day, but you get the point.
They do, and yeah, because I could definitely talk about that. Because they do need help.
So
because
what are some things?
They're coming from a broken place as well.
Sorry, that's true. Yeah, they are. And I think that so let me go back a little bit. We were talking about some things that they can do, some tools that they can do during the healing process. So what are some things that you would recommend someone who's really trying to heal emotionally? What are some things that you would recommend for them?
So now that it is becoming more relevant and a little more popular, I definitely think seeking counsel, therapy is helpful. But there are a wealth of a lot of domestic abuse support groups that are out there, whether they're hosted by your local church or domestic violence organizations, where you can go and you can sit with other survivors who are also processing, and then they have, qualified individuals there who can help walk you through your journey. For me, spirituality was really significant in my journey. But it's different for everybody. Some people are spiritual or into it, and some people are not. But for me, it was significant. So it wasn't just limited to just being able to say, hey, okay, I'll just go to a therapist or I'll just go to church. It was a kind of a balance of both.
Yeah, there you go.
And being able to know how to talk to people who, it's important to work with people who are also kind of in a whole space, because it's hard to just lean on people who are also in a broken space or don't know. Because again, people really don't understand domestic abuse in its various forms. So if they don't understand everything, it can be hard for them to know how to support you. So I think, now we have so many resources now that even more than when I was out, when it first happened to me, that you have access to different organizations that can help connect you to the right people and the right support systems. Because I'll be honest, as much as we love our family and friends, a lot of times they are not always equipped to get us through the healing journey. Because sometimes they didn't even know to recognize that you were in a situation, or some people have this perspective of, well, you still shouldn't leave that person. I've heard so many horror stories of people saying their family still wanted them to stay in the relationship even after they found out what was going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's important that you align yourself with people who are focused on, your safety, who want, the best for you, and who want to make sure that you break the cycle and patterns of ending up in another unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the balance of spirituality, whatever your faith, is, and a therapist, hello, go to therapy, go to group, find whatever it is,
Yes,
whatever path it is, do yoga, meditate, do whatever it is you
yes,
need to do. And I do agree, get a couple of forms, of something that can help you. And don't be afraid to feel. And I think one of the things we talked about on one another live I did was it hurts and it's okay to feel that hurt. We're not going to stay there forever, but we're going to say this hurts. I don't like it. I'm sad, but I know that this is not going to last always.
right.
So yeah, Kathleen saying there are a lot of resources, like Qiana said, there are a lot of resources.
Okay.
And I think sometimes you just have to step out of your shell and ask for it. And ask for the help. You can't be afraid and ashamed. Okay, let me touch on this. So there really should be no shame. We as survivors, victims, should not carry the shame. We didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Somebody said something a little bit earlier about going from relationship to relationship to relationship because they haven't healed. And I know that was something that we were going to touch on a little bit, Qiana. I think you're frozen. Say, hey, you frozen?
Right.
Okay, you are. Okay. And so I think it's important.
Okay.
I think it's important to realize. I knew for myself when I got out of no one was ever going to hurt me that way again. It was not going to be an option for me. I had decided in my mind that kind of pain is something that I never wanted to experience again. Were all my dating relationships after that perfect? No, but I knew that no one was ever going to be able to do that to me again. And so I think that, and I wasn't even completely healed at the point. I had just made up my mind that wasn't going to happen to me again. And so I think it's important that before we decide that we're ready to move on and date, that we at least begin the healing journey and on our way.
Yes. And it's funny because the young lady I used to work with in Maryland, she posted about that the other day when she was announcing her engagement. And she talked about the importance of the time that she realized after having a string of unsuccessful relationships, she needed to stop and take time to work on herself and rebuild herself in order to attract something different. And so she said that healing journey brought me to this person who now can recognize who I am. And so I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Because, anytime I can hear anybody talk about, celebrate the healing journey, because like you said earlier, the healing journey is wavy. It's not easy. So a lot of people check out at a certain point.
When it dips down, maybe. When it dips down and it hurts and it's low, forget it. No.
They get, and so at that point, you interrupt your healing, and now you're still dealing with the residue of the brokenness. You're still engaging with people in an unhealthy manner. So you're forgetting that I put the mantle of healing down, and so I need to be able to pick it back up, because the reality is what I desire in my life is not going to be attracted to me if I'm still broken.
Ooh, girl, I think you were saying something. Girl. You were saying something. It's true, though. It's true. You got to keep going on a healing journey. You can't just give up because you're at that low. Understand it. It's hills and valleys. It kind of goes up and down. But the up is coming soon. But you can't disrupt your healing journey.
So it's
really important, because I've been divorced from my ex-husband 10 years. I've been remarried almost 4, and I'm still on a healing journey. You don't just wake and you be like, and especially I think I'm going to touch on this real quick, because we're in a time in this world which is just unbelievable. We have never seen this before. And like we talked before we hit the live button, is that excuse me, people are experiencing like trauma in new ways, in different ways. Things are triggering people who have experienced trauma. And so it's really important if during this season that you're feeling some kind of way, you're anxiety. Like today, my husband and I went to the store, and he was like, all right, babe, I'll meet you in that store. I was like, no. Like, I was like, I don't like to be, I have this thing about my ex, getting left and stuff like that. I don't like it. I just don't like it. Okay, y'all, I said it. So don't leave me. And so he was like, no, he's like, okay. He looked at me, he's like, okay, I got it. And so I was like, we'll go in the store together, because I don't know why I always go in the store by myself, but for some reason today I didn't want to do it. And so the side note is it's really important to connect with someone who understands your journey and what you've been on. And instead of saying, girl, you can't go to the store by yourself, you're 40 years old, you know? And he was like, oh, babe, I got you because I understand. There's a lot going on in the world. You're being triggered. Your traumas are coming back up. I understand it. So I was saying that to say that point, and I started rambling, and I don't know what my point was anymore, but you get what I'm saying. Right?
But you know what? Actually, that goes in line with why we chose this topic. I remember when we were first talking about how some of us can meet someone who's very good at walking with us in our healing, but we have to be able to recognize it and allow them that space to help us, because some people are equipped to help their mate go through the healing journey. Some people are equipped to walk with you, because you know, for some people it is hard to do alone. It is hard to just do with a therapist. For some people it is easier if they still have an intimate partner that can be with them, that can walk with them, support them, and love them. And like you said, have that compassion and empathy for you to understand that, you know, things are going to take time, and you're going to have to be able to understand, yes, walking in or out of a store can be traumatic because of experiences that you had with the other person. And so, but people don't understand that. Like, when you're in a relationship, there are so many things that happen that people would be like, that happened to you? Like, really? But when you go back to doing just regular day-to-day stuff, that stuff can be triggers to those memories. You know, and so it's important for people to understand you can't, you know, be judgmental. You have to have everybody can be empathetic, but you can at least be compassionate and have some sympathy to understand that it takes time. Everybody can't heal overnight, you know, and it does take a process. Because for me, my first healing encounter and process, it took years. It took years, because it was hard, it was unfamiliar, it was uncomfortable, you know. But once I got to the finish line, I was like, ain't nobody gonna take this away from me. Like, you know, and I remember encountering people who tried to like still, you know, minimize that. And I was like, no, you know, I did the work. Like Qiana Van Zandt said, I did my work.
I did the work. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second too, because I think people miss the fact that you have to do the work. Emotional healing, any type of healing, you have to do the work. You know, say if you break a bone, you have to go into rehab. You got to do the work. You got to get moving again so the bone can work, so you can start to walk again, so you can start to talk again. There's work involved in the healing process. And so whether it's yoga or therapy or church or journaling or counseling or whatever it is, you have to do the work. And I promise you, Qiana, and I feel like if I could just look at some people and say, do the work. Yes, it hurts like hell sometimes. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it's hard. But it's so funny when you were talking about the work. And your smile, you just said, but I did the work. And you just lit up because you know what it looks like at the finish line. You know what it looks like at the finish line.
Yes. Because here's what we have to remember. And I always remind my clients this. You know, we live in a lifetime and world where traumas are always going to keep happening. So if we keep like suppressing each traumatic life experience and we just keep letting it pile up, eventually you're going to erupt like a volcano. And so if you go through the healing journey, it doesn't mean that you'll never have any bad experiences ever again. It just means I now can deal with it stronger, wiser, and I can navigate it through it quicker, you know, because honestly, my healing journey the first time was years. But the next time I needed to go through a healing journey, it took much less time. But the reality is I knew what to do. And I also understood the benefits of it. I understood that this was significant. Like, oh yeah, I need to be back to myself. I need to be able to speak out again. I need to be able to be whole. Because again, at that point, I'm well into helping other people go through their journeys. And I can't be broken up. And they trying to tell me their problems, and I'm sitting here crying with them. Like, I
just can't do it. No. And I remember when I was doing my master's in counseling, we had to have therapy because I can't be sitting in front of a client boo-hoo crying because she went through. We can't do that. We have to go through our own healing journey. Yeah. So I forgot what I was going to say, but go ahead. I forgot I was going to say what.
But you know what? Just to that point, because I've actually have colleagues who work in the field, and they're so broken, and it's hard for them to be effective in their role as a therapist because they're so busy dealing with their stuff that when they go before other people, it's hard for them to interact with them. It's hard for them to be a light because they're dealing with their own internal struggles. So
Therapist,
again, yeah, I tell people all the time, everybody got to go through healing. It doesn't matter what your experience. You may not have been in an abusive relationship, but something has happened to you that has traumatized you, that caused you to need some form of healing. We all need healing. We all need to be able to go through that process to be whole, and understanding that wholeness means that you love yourself more, you value yourself, you have healthy boundaries, you're able to love more freely, you're able to have exercise more compassion, you care about your physical being. Now you're more conscious about, you know, your health and your wellness. So it's like you even are more in tune with yourself spiritually. Like it opens up so many wonderful doors that you can see, like, wow, this affects everything. Now I can even be aligned with my purpose. Now I can stop working jobs that I hate and do the things that I love because I feel good about myself. I'm happy, I'm at peace, and I'm now walking it out.
Qiana, you are preaching, girl, preaching. I'm over here taking notes. Listen though, because when you talked about, once you start the healing journey and you start to become whole, you're able to, let me tell you, I work with survivors who have some of the best and most amazing talents and gifts inside of themselves, but because they've been on this journey of brokenness and an abusive relationship, these businesses aren't being done. These books aren't being written. All these amazing things that they have inside of them. But you said, once you start that healing and journey to wholeness, you learn healthy boundaries. First of all, no, you can't talk to me like that. I'm very good about that.
Yes.
Don't talk to me like that. No, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going. No, I tell myself, like, if I ever invited somewhere and I don't like it, or I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going. Like, why would I put myself in a situation where I did that for so many years of my life? I refuse. I'd rather stay home alone on my couch, you know. But anyway, healthy boundaries are very important. You allow what you say to me, what you're allowed to do to me, who you allow in your space. If I don't want anybody in my space that kind of makes me feel a certain way, I don't like it, and so you don't allow it. I'm telling y'all, these aren't things. These are just things that you learn during the process. You care about your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health, and then you're able to walk in your purpose. There is no way I could have started Stand Up Survivor broken the way that I was. There's no way. You couldn't have done Empowered to Heal. You've been empowered to heal. Because you healed, right? And so the point of the story is, whoever's listening, you guys, survivors, victims, whatever your story is, there's something amazing inside of you that once healed and whole, and once you're on that journey, you can begin to soar. You can begin to do everything that you could never do. Go.
I mean, growing up, I had a plan for my life of what I thought I was going to do, what I was going to be. And I've always been interested in psychology. So that's always been part of my natural makeup. But if you told me I would have written a book, I would have become an entrepreneur, I would have spoke out about domestic violence, like I would have been like, no, not me. But having those experiences that led me to a broken place, but then also led me to my healing place, pulled out a level of purpose that I didn't even imagine. And the fact that I'm still moving forward, it's still more to come. Like, this is not it. This is not the end of the road for me. Like each time I take a new step and have a new experience of elevation, I'm like, so I can do more. I can do more. I can go higher. And so you become addicted to the elevation, the growth and the expansion in your life, because now you're realizing I can be somebody significant. I can help someone. I can be kind and empowering to someone else. And at the end of the day, I can change a life. I could save a life. We don't understand, just even a kind word could save someone's life. You don't know where they were in their minds and what they were getting ready to do. There were some people that would say, I almost killed myself, but somebody said something nice to me or smiled at me. You just don't know. So you have to realize that it's not just about you. You get through your process. Yes, it's to help empower you and make yourself a priority. But at the end of the day, it's also to serve purpose, to help someone else that's coming behind you.
I love that. Like, I could have totally shouted all out, like, yes, because the thing about it is when you're a victim in an abusive relationship, listen, your worth is nothing. You don't think you're anything. Your self-esteem is low. They've done everything that they could possibly do to completely break you down. So any hopes or dreams or goals that you could have had or thought about, forget about it. You're worthless. You're nothing. No one's ever going to want you. So that's what's in your head. But once you get out of that and you realize, wait a minute. There's more to this life. Wait, I can be who I thought I could be. I thought it's like, wait a minute. There's this whole life outside of everything that you said I couldn't do. I can, you know, but go ahead. Sorry. You broke up.
Because you know what? I remember having that experience. I had left college earlier than I was supposed to. So I tried to finish while I was in that relationship. And they made me feel like this was pointless. It was worthless. So I stopped going. So I didn't even get my degrees until after that relationship ended. And it was like, I got the first one. And I was like, okay, that was good. I accomplished getting my bachelor's because I was supposed to get it when I was 22 and I didn't. I'm in my 30s. So I was like, okay. And I still really wasn't clear on what to do with my life. But I was like, God, I feel like there's something more in me. There's something else I'm supposed to do. So I felt a tug to get my master's, but I was like, I don't know what to get it in. Do I stay in the field of psychology or, you know, because I was still dealing with insecurities. Yeah. Because, you know, I struggled with that. I was insecure for a long time, way before even that relationship. Honestly, I struggled with loving myself for a long time from when I was a teenager. So for me, a lot of people don't even believe that. They're like, no, not you. But I struggled with low self-esteem for a long time. So that was also part of the healing journey that had helped me see, Qiana, you need to start loving yourself.
Yep.
You need to start valuing yourself. And because until you do, you're never going to think that you're deserving of anything more. You're never going to think that you're deserving of success. You're never going to think you're deserving of a nice car or a nice home or even a good relationship or good friends. And you'll think you always feel like you have to settle. And so the reality is once I started loving me more and I started accepting me and the greatest part was it was after I had babies, I had gained all this weight, but you know what? I was like, I'm gonna love me in this skin. Before I worry about losing weight, I'm gonna love me with my new curves. And so I became more in tune with me as a woman, more as a woman and as a mother. So at that point, I was like, I don't have to be a size 4 anymore to still say that I'm beautiful. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So for me, so now I'm like, now I am, you know, I'm health conscious. I do always, you know, work on, you know, my weight and my eat, but I don't even care about being skinny anymore. I just want to be healthy. Yeah. And I just want to be able to look in the mirror and still smile and say, I'm cute.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because our stories are so similar. And like they're so similar. We'll talk about it later, but so similar. He didn't want me to go to school either, so I stopped going to school. It took me 10 years to get a bachelor's degree, and I was like, "Oh, this is just the beginning. We're going." And it's so empowering. I want to touch on something. A comment somebody said that they've been having triggers since their ex beat them a few months ago, and that they're trying to heal for themselves and for their three children to show them a healthy mother. And so I want to talk about that real quick because we were talking about healing earlier, and I think for me, it was very important to heal for myself so that I was able to heal my children as well. You know, when I was going through when I was going through the trauma of the abuse, my children were going through it with me, physically there, seeing, hearing everything. So it was important to me to be responsible responsible for their peace, for their joy, and for their healing as well. And so as I healed, I believe that my children healed too. And another part of that is also it was important for me to show them. And I used to pray to God, please let me show my children what a healthy marriage or relationship looks like. And through my new marriage, I'm able to do that. Right. You know, they're walking around like, that's so nasty, y'all are gross. And I'm like, yes. you know, compared to what it used to be, you know? And so I think that's really important. But you were going to say something about the healing for the children.
You're right, because when we do, what I always tell people, especially if you're a parent, it is hard to be, no matter, it's never to say that you're not a good parent and that you don't love your kids. But when you are not at your best, it's hard to do your best for them. And it's hard to emulate and model certain things that you want them to see if you can't show them that because you don't even know how to reside in it yourself.
Ooh, that's good.
And so when you don't know how to reside in being loving and affectionate and the importance of family time and, doing things that, stimulate your mind and your emotions. If you don't know how to do that yourself, you can't teach that to your children. And so what we don't realize is our children are being shaped and molded to be the adults that, when they grow up, they're going to become what they saw and what they were exposed to in their childhood. And so unfortunately, sometimes we deal with, the remnants of our childhood because we have parents that were living in their own brokenness, and we caught the remnants of that.
Yeah.
And so it's a pattern, it's a cycle that creates. And so I think it's important. I mean, I had an unusual experience that allowed me, some time to go through a healing journey for my children. And it was a time where the girls were not with me. And that was the hardest year of my life. And I remember asking God at one point, why are you letting this happen? Why are you letting this happen? I need my babies with me. And he's like, you need to be healed first, because when they come back, they're going to need you to be in a whole space, because now they're going to need healing.
Ooh,
because they're going through a experience of being away from their mom. And so it was just, at that point, it changed my perspective, and it helped me, it motivated me more to be in a state, because God was right. When they came back, they were traumatized by the fact that, Dad did what he did to take them away. And so it was just like, we didn't want to be here. And so we had to, I had to help them go through that. And the thing is, it wasn't for me to demonize him or talk about him or insult him. It was just to focus on, how are you feeling? What is it that you need? What can mommy do to help you?
Yeah, that's
what are some things and some feelings? What's on your mind? The girls and I talk a lot about a lot of things, even when they say things and I'm like, oh Lord. But the reality is we have developed an open communication. And again, they know clearly I'm not a friend, I'm mom, but it's an open communication to teach them how to express their feelings, how to say when I'm sad, when I'm feeling anxious, when I'm frustrated, or when I'm happy. They have a balance of knowing how to express those different emotions, because I had to take the time to figure out how to express them myself
and balance it for yourself. Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
That's good. I absolutely agree with that. I think that's so powerful. She said, we can't teach our children what we don't know, what you just said. Exactly. And I think too, listen, when you're coming out of a relationship or you're just out, it's crisis mode. And I remember just like, love my kids. I would put them to bed, and then I would go in the shower and I would just lose it, But it was really important for me, and everybody is different, but it's important for me to lose it, not in front of my children, because I feel as though they had already seen enough trauma and enough pain. So it was important for me to, okay, if I want to lose it, if I want to go crazy, I'll do it alone. And then so they can see. And so it gave me a chance to heal kind of on my own and then get back to my children. I don't know if you see any comments on the side.
I see some of them. So I was going to respond about we don't teach our children what we don't know. I want to make a comment about, don't be too prideful to learn and get information. Because I think a lot of times we know we don't know something, but we don't take the time to actually seek knowledge. The reality is, even with some of the books out here for parenting, the reality is there really isn't a perfect handbook out here for parenting. You're still learning as you go, but even in that, follow people that that you can be mentored through. Like, I love YouTube. You can pull up so many people who are inspirational, who are motivational, who can, just share insight and tips and things that can help teach you how to become a better person, how to become a better parent, how, communication skills, being able to have conversations with people where you feel like I'm learning from this situation for me to grow and mature. Because the reality is we don't know everything, but to decide I don't know and I'm just not going to pursue knowledge of it, it's just It's just unhealthy. And I think that's where we struggle with domestic abuse. A lot of people really don't understand domestic abuse in its different forms because we lack knowledge and we don't want to look it up. We don't want to find out. We don't want to learn in order to really understand, one, how do I recognize if I'm in an abusive relationship or if someone around me is? You know, when I listen to a lot of victim stories and they talk about how many people were around them and didn't even have a clue, you know, that they were in an abusive relationship. It's like, because they don't know the signs either. Yeah. You know, they didn't, you know. So for me, one of the things that I found significant for myself was not finding a voice to be able to teach and educate other people, but even within my own family circle, you know, because I end up finding out even through my story, other people, you know, in my family had experienced abuse and nobody talked about it. Yeah. You know, unfortunately, I lost an aunt at the hands of her estranged husband. Even when that happened, we didn't have family meetings. We didn't talk about what happened and how did it was just like side conversations with different people of getting pieces of the story. But the reality is we never addressed it as a whole family. Yeah. You know, what was going on. And honestly, if we did, I probably would have ended up in an abusive relationship because I was still young.
You know, you'd have known what it looked like.
I still didn't know. And so I didn't even know what to look for. I didn't know what to, you know, that, like we talked earlier, I'm in this relationship, something doesn't feel right, but I don't know what it is. Yeah. So I'm just going to stay and deal with it. Yeah. And so that's what we have to remember. Don't be afraid. Don't be too proud to like seek knowledge, look up information.
Because we always do.
Here now. You can Google anything.
Yeah. And we're always looking for things to grow and learn.
We're on Facebook talking about it.
So does anybody have any questions? Oh, sorry. Does anybody have any other questions before we free Qiana from the Stand Up Survivor holds? I'm so excited that you came on. I think emotionally healing is super, super duper important. And I think too, you talked about it's important to break the cycle. We have to break the cycle so that our children and our families don't continue to hide under the shroud of abuse. So if anybody has any other questions, is anything else you wanted to say before we go, Qiana?
So I want to help people understand too, even in the brokenness, if we don't heal, it can lead to other things. It can lead to the cycle of addiction. It can lead to, you know, the cycle of having unhealthy relationships, and not just intimate relationships. You can have unhealthy work relationships where you find yourself, you at jobs always going off on your boss, and you know you don't really have a problem with the boss or the job, but you're so angry. You're harboring this anger and this depression and these anxieties from the trauma of your past that you don't even know how to interact with other people in a healthy manner. And so sometimes, you know, I always tell people when I encounter people that tend to just walk around with a chip on their shoulder, and I hear people criticize them like, they always angry, they always got attitude. I was like, but the reality is, the question is, what's wrong with them?
What hurt them?
There's something going on. There's something, that's pain.
Yeah, that's anger coming out of anger.
That's pain. Yeah. That's all it is. I keep telling people anger is the surface emotion, but there's a root cause that's pain. And honestly, we're seeing it right now in our world. We're seeing the roots of an issue coming out and escalating through anger. And so now we're like, we don't even know how to manage it.
And that anger is the result of deep wounded pain, of generation, hundreds of years of just pain. We're tired of seeing it. And so what we're seeing with all the stuff that's going on is the root of pain. Nats, you made some good comments. Hey, Nats, you made some great comments.
Yeah. And I'm very big on the intuition thing. Listen to your gut. You're right. I mean, because that was one of the things I had to learn is trust your gut. If your instincts is telling you something's not right, even if you don't know how to identify it or label it, still trust your instinct. Trust your gut, because your gut never lies. If that alarm inside of you is telling you something is wrong, and red alert, trust me, something is wrong, and you need to go into protective mode.
Well, that's good. You know, something is wrong, go into protective mode. Put your shield up. Say, hey, whoa, something's not right. Let me figure out what's going on so that I can get down to it. Yep. Hurt
Yeah.
turns to anger. Yeah, that what we're seeing on the
Yeah.
news, it's hurt. It's hurt turned to anger.
It is. It is.
And that also said something earlier. I want to say, learning what healthy boundaries are is crucial for prevention of abuse. Yes.
Yes.
Let's see.
And we have to understand abuse is not just from intimate partners. You know, we can be in a situation where other people are mistreating us and taking advantage of us. And so those healthy boundaries protects you from that. It protects you from people, you know, using you as a doormat. And, you know, you don't have to. I hear so many people talk about how they feel like they have to please everybody that's around them. And so they have to say yes when they want to say no. I like what you said earlier. If I don't want to go, I'm not going. Because I don't feel like it. Because and I was a yes person for a long time. Everything was yes, okay, I'll do it, even if I didn't want to, even if it made me uncomfortable. But the reality is now I'm like, no. If I don't want to leave the house, no. If I don't want to do this, no.
And you know, I want to touch on something you just said, like the ability to say no. It's like when we do things that we don't want to do, it's like a violation of ourselves. Or we put ourselves in situations where we don't feel comfortable. It's like we're re-victimizing ourselves or putting ourselves in places where we don't feel safe or comfortable. So the answer is no. You know, like the answer is no. And I was going to talk about that. I love that you said that. We go into like there's different stages of people pleasing. We want that approval. Am I still beautiful? Am I still important? Do you care about me? Whether it's an intimate relationship or a friendship or a partner, whatever it is, you still want these questions. But you have to realize that boundaries are really important. And if someone crosses those boundaries, whether it's a family member, your mother, your grandma, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whoever, understand that you have to keep those boundaries up. You don't let anybody cross them. And then they are forced to respect your boundaries. So when they say that you teach people how to treat you, if you don't let me talk to you or treat you any kind of way, I can't because you won't allow it.
Right.
So
right. I love Michelle's question. If you don't mind, I want to answer.
Please,
how do we get this? So just like Stand Up Survivor and other organizations, like I have other acquaintances who have domestic violence organizations, and they're doing a lot of things right now where they have meetings in their local systems. They're creating petitions and everything like that. I think, and even now I'm actually in the process for Georgia doing the training for the Family Violence Intervention Program. And one of the things they talk about is a lot of times the victims will start and initiate things, but then eventually they'll check out. And so the follow through and the consistency is also what, will make the courts hear you out. Because the courts in the legal system, they're aware that is a problem. Yes. The problem is nobody wants to stick to the whole process and play it out to the end for actual resolution to take place. And so when it keeps getting interrupted, they feel like, okay, well, if nobody else want to take it seriously, then why should we? Okay. And so it's just a consistency. If you know that you're called to do, even if you're just called to support an organization, ask them, how can we help? Are there petitions I need to help promote and put out there? Are there meetings I need to attend? What are the things that I can do? Because everybody's not called to, start a domestic violence organization. You can get connected one to support them, support them. Ask them, what are you guys doing? What are your visions and missions and goals for the community? Whether it's opening up safe houses or, addressing the legal system, because there are still a lot of things to address in the legal systems. And the fact that each state varies in their laws regarding it, it's still a lot of work to be done. Yep. So it's still a lot of work to be done. It takes a lot. And unfortunately, I always see where it comes down to, it'll start off with hundreds of people saying, yeah, rah, rah, rah. And then it end up being left on to just a couple of people to still carry it through. And it's a heavy load. It's a heavy load. So we have to be consistent in our support and effort. So, even with here, you guys, I love that you're on here. You're supporting Stand Up Survivor. It's important to remain consistent and not just wanting to participate in the social aspect, but what can we do to help? Whether it's donations or attending events that help us speak out and strengthen our voice. in this, because the reality is this is an issue that's been going on for a long time. It's been an unspoken issue. It's been a hidden issue. And now, yes, we talk about it more, but it's still a lot of talking that's still not being, a lot of conversations that are not being held, you know. And so we have to still continue to push and press forward, and being able to challenge people to have those conversations. And how do we, you know, speak out against these things? Having the conversations even with your families. You know, one of the things you know, a lot of my family members start coming to me like, thank you for saying something. Thank you for speaking out. And it started empowering them to have a voice, empowering them to advocate for different issues. Because the reality is sometimes it starts just even in our own small circle first, and then it can expand out to our churches and, you know, our, you know, communities and our workplaces. Because you'll be surprised even how many coworkers you work with that are dealing with abuse right now.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are high. It's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, and it's 1 in 3 teenagers. Yeah. So I love that conversation, having that conversation at home. I mean, those numbers are huge. Are we teaching our children about the signs of dating violence? You know, that's really important. Listen, Qiana, you know that if we turn on the television right now, we'll see a murder-suicide that occurred, or even just a murder based on domestic violence. And the truth of the matter, with the court systems, it's a broken system. There's so much that needs to be done. Emotional and psychological abuse needs to be recognized in every state, and there needs to be followed through with laws. But like you said, a lot of people gear up at the beginning, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes and follow through that has to happen, because survivors deserve justice. You know. But I always tell them this: I'd rather you fight for your life and your safety than anything else. That's priority, you know. And I think you said a little bit earlier how when you left, you didn't care about everything you left in the house. You were leaving with your babies and yourself so that you could get to safety, and that was what was most important. So anyway, you guys, thank you for hanging out with us today. Listen, Qiana, I put up earlier the Empower to Heal LLC, where they can find you, as well as you have a website, or I know you do. I should put it in here.
Yes, I do.
Let me put it in here real quick. I'm ready to go.
It's empoweredtoheal.info.
All right, you guys can find her there. She is also on social media, Facebook, and I started following because I just love the things that she had to say. I love the fact that she's been through her healing process, and now she's empowered to heal others. So thank you for hanging out with us, Qiana, and we will see you later, guys. See ya.
And Michelle, I'm praying for you.
Yes. Oh, she said that she's praying for you, Michelle. By the way, I hope you heard that.
Yeah,
we're praying for you.
Okay.
All right. See you later.
All right. Thank you. Bye.